I am 54 years old, a woman who has known grief and has learned to live with its quiet hum. My son, Leo, who is 25, gave his entire $2 million inheritance to a crypto guru. That money was not just money. It was the last piece of his father I had left to give him. It was his future, his safety net, the final loving provision from a man who would never see him grow older. And my son gave it away. He gave it to a man who called himself Kairo, a man with a smile as bright and empty as a polished stone. The day I found out, the world tilted on its axis. It was not a sudden crash, but a slow, sickening slide into a reality I did not recognize. It began with a simple question, a loose thread I pulled on, not knowing it was attached to the very fabric of our lives. It had been a few months since Leo started talking about Kairo. At first, it was just mentions of an online mentor, a financial visionary who was changing the world. Leo's language began to change. He spoke of decentralization, of paradigm shifts, of legacy systems crumbling. He used words I did not understand, and when I asked him to explain, he would sigh with a kind of weary patience. It was the sigh of a man burdened with knowledge, trying to explain the color blue to someone who could only see in shades of gray. I tried to be interested. I truly did. I asked him to tell me more about this new world he was so excited about. "Mom, it is the future," he would say, his eyes shining with a fervor that worried me. "Kairo says we are on the precipice of the greatest wealth transfer in human history. And this Kairo, he is helping you invest?" I asked one evening over dinner. He shook his head, a small, condescending smile playing on his lips. "It is not about investing. It is about belief. It is about joining a movement. You are still thinking in old money terms." I felt a prickle of annoyance. "Old money terms paid for this house, Leo. It paid for your education." "Exactly," he said, leaning forward. "That is the system Kairo is disrupting. It is a system built on exclusion. We are building a new one where everyone has a chance." His words sounded grand and hopeful, but they felt hollow. They sounded rehearsed. I felt a growing unease, a cold knot forming in my stomach that had nothing to do with finance and everything to do with the son I was losing. The Leo the first knew was practical, thoughtful. He was his father's son, cautious and deliberate. This new Leo was a stranger, a convert speaking in tongues I could not decipher. My late husband, Robert, had worked his entire life to build a secure future for us. He was an engineer, a man who believed in tangible things, in blueprints and stress tests. The insurance policy he left behind was his final, carefully constructed project, designed to protect his family after he was gone. $2 million. It was a staggering sum, meant to give Leo a start in life that Robert never had. It was meant for a house, for family, for a business. It was meant for a life, not a movement. The real trouble started when I noticed Leo was selling things. Small things at first. His collection of vintage guitars, his father's old watch. I asked him about it and he was evasive. "I am just liquidating non-essential assets," he said, using that strange, detached language again. "I am going all in." "All in on what, Leo?" I pressed, my voice sharper than I intended. "On the future, Mom," he said, and his eyes held a hint of pity for me. "You would not understand." That was when the real fear began to set in. I decided to talk to my friend Sarah. Sarah is a financial advisor, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had helped Robert and me with our estate planning. I trusted her implicitly. I met her for coffee, my hands trembling so much I could barely hold my cup. I explained Leo's new vocabulary, his talk of a guru named Kairo, his selling of personal items. Sarah listened patiently, her expression growing more and more concerned. When I finished, she took a slow sip of her latte. "Tell me this Kairo's full name," she said. I told her what I knew. She pulled out her phone and began typing. For a few minutes, the only sound was the clinking of cups and the low murmur of conversation around us. Then, she looked up, her face grim. "There is a lot of chatter about him online," she said. "Lots of flashy photos. Private jets, expensive cars, parties with influencers. But I cannot find a single verifiable credential. No Series 7 license, no record with the SEC. He is a ghost. What does that mean? I asked, though I think I already knew. It means he is likely operating completely outside the law, she said. These guys are a dime a dozen. They build a cult of personality, promise impossible returns, and prey on people who are looking for a shortcut or something to believe in. She paused, her eyes meeting mine. You said Leo has access to his inheritance, right? Unrestricted? I nodded, my throat suddenly tight.
Yes.
Robert wanted him to have that freedom when he turned 25-inch. Sarah leaned forward. You need to find out exactly how much money he has given this man.
Not what he says he has given him.
You need to see the bank statements. You need to see the transfer records. Her words were a cold splash of water.
I had been avoiding this.
I had been afraid of what I might find. I had been clinging to the hope that this was just a phase, an expensive hobby. But Sarah's seriousness told me I could not afford to hope anymore. I needed facts. That evening, I waited until Leo went out with some of his new community members, as he called them. My heart pounded in my chest as I went into his room. It felt like a terrible violation of his privacy, but the fear for his safety was greater than my guilt. His room, usually so neat, was in disarray. Books on economics and history were gone, replaced by thin paperbacks with titles like The Quantum Leap and Mind Currency. On his desk. Under a pile of papers, I found it. A folder from the bank. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were the official transfer documents. I read them once, then twice, then a third time, the words blurring through the tears that filled my eyes. It was not an investment. It was a wire transfer. A single transaction for the full amount. $2 million. And the recipient was not a brokerage firm or an investment fund. It was a foundation. The Kairo Freedom Foundation. In the details section, one word was typed in capital letters. Gift. An irrevocable gift. I sank onto Leo's bed, the papers fluttering from my hand. The air left my lungs. It was gone. All of it. Every dollar his father had worked for, every sacrifice, every late night at the office. It was all gone, gifted to a man with a manufactured smile and a ghost's credentials. This was not a mistake. This was not a bad investment that could be recovered. This was a deliberate, total surrender of his entire future. In that moment, the slow, sickening slide stopped. I had hit the bottom, and in the darkness, a new feeling began to bloom alongside the grief and the terror. It was anger, a cold, clear, and righteous anger. This man had not just taken the money. He had taken my son, and I was going to get him back. The first step was to confront Leo. I had to try, even though I knew what his reaction would be. I had to hear it from him. I waited for him to come home. The bank documents laid out on the kitchen table like an indictment. He walked in just after midnight, humming to himself, his face flushed with excitement. You will not believe the energy tonight, Mom, he began, and then he saw my face. He saw the papers on the table. The smile vanished. What is this? He asked, his voice suddenly hard. I think you know what it is, Leo, I said, my own voice quiet but steady. I went into your room. I found these. He stared at the papers, his jaw tightening. You had no right to go through my things. I had no right. I stood up, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. That money was from your father. It was his legacy to you. And you gave it away? As a gift. It was not a gift, he snapped, his eyes flashing with the same zealous light I had come to dread. It was a contribution to the cause. It is an investment in a better world. A better world for who, Leo? For Kairo. I pushed the papers toward him. Did you even read this? It says irrevocable gift. That means you cannot get it back. Ever. It is gone. I do not want it back, he shouted, his hands clenched into fists. You do not get it. You will never get it. You are trapped in the old ways, the old thinking. Kairo is building something new, and I am a part of it. I am a founding member. You are a victim, Leo, I said, my voice breaking. He is a con man. A predator. He saw you coming. No, he said, shaking his head, his expression a mixture of anger and pity. You are the one who does not see. I feel sorry for you. You are afraid of the future, so you want to hold me back in the past with you. He turned and walked away, heading to his room. Leo, please, I called after him, my voice pleading. Just talk to me. Let us talk to a real financial advisor. Let us just get a second opinion. He stopped at the door to his room and looked back at me, his face a cold mask. Kairo is my advisor. He is the only one I trust. Then he went into his room and closed the door, leaving me alone in the silent kitchen with the papers that confirmed my worst fears. The conversation was a failure, just as I had known it would be.
He was too far in.
Logic could not reach him. Facts could not sway him. He was living in a different reality, one constructed for him by Kairo. I knew then that a direct approach would never work. I could not reason with him. I had to find another way. I had to dismantle the world Kairo had built around him. I had to show him the truth in a way he could not deny. And I had to do it before he was lost to me forever. The anger I felt earlier began to solidify into a plan. A desperate, risky plan. But it was the only one I had. His 25th birthday was in a few weeks. He had mentioned, with a strange pride, that Kairo himself would be attending the party he was planning. He saw it as a great honor. I saw it as an opportunity, a stage. I would give my son a birthday gift he would never forget. I would give him the truth. My grief for the lost money was real, but it was quickly overshadowed by a fierce, protective instinct. The $2 million was a symbol of Robert's love, and seeing it squandered felt like a second death. But Leo was still alive, and he was in danger. Kairo had not just stolen his inheritance. He had stolen his judgment, his independence, his very sense of self. My son, who had always been so grounded, was now floating in a sea of jargon and false promises, and Kairo was his only anchor. I had to cut the rope. My first call, after that disastrous confrontation with Leo, was back to Sarah. I told her everything. About the irrevocable gift, about Leo's reaction, about his complete devotion to Kairo. I could hear her sigh on the other end of the line. This is worse than I thought, she said. This is classic cult behavior. Isolate the mark from their support system, make them feel like they are part of an exclusive group, and then drain their resources. The gift designation is a legal maneuver to protect him from lawsuits claiming investment fraud. So, there is nothing we can do legally? I asked, a fresh wave of despair washing over me. It is very difficult, she admitted. Leo is an adult. He signed the papers. You would have to prove he was mentally incompetent or under undue influence, which is a very high bar. It could take years and cost a fortune in legal fees, with no guarantee of success. My heart sank. A legal battle seemed hopeless. It would only drive Leo further away, making him see me as the enemy Kairo was probably already telling him I was. So what do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You cannot force him to see the truth, Sarah said gently. He has to come to it on his own. All you can do is create a crack in the foundation of his belief. You need to find something that contradicts the narrative Kairo has built. Something undeniable. Her words echoed my own thoughts. I needed proof. Hard, irrefutable proof. My quest began online. I spent hours, days, hunched over my laptop, diving into the digital world Kairo had created. His social media was a carefully curated fantasy. Pictures of him on yachts, surrounded by beautiful people, all smiling, all seemingly successful. He posted inspirational quotes about breaking free from the matrix and achieving sovereign wealth. His followers, thousands of them, left comments filled with praise and adoration. Thank you for showing us the way, Kairo. You have changed my life. To the moon. It was sickening. It was a digital temple built on lies. I started digging deeper, past the glossy surface. I searched for his name along with words like scam, fraud, and complaint. At first, I found very little. His online reputation was meticulously managed. Any negative comments on his posts were quickly deleted. But I kept digging. I went to the fringes of the internet, to obscure forums and message boards dedicated to exposing financial scams. And there, I found them. The other families. The stories were all heartbreakingly similar. A son who gave away his college fund. A daughter who emptied her trust account. A young man who convinced his elderly parents to remortgage their house. The names of the victims were different, but the predator was the same. Kairo. They described the same methods of indoctrination, the same promises of a golden future, the same devastating financial and emotional fallout. They spoke of their children becoming distant, paranoid, and hostile towards anyone who questioned the guru. Reading their stories was like looking into a terrifying mirror of my own life. I was not alone. I created an anonymous account and began to reach in private messages. Many were too broken or ashamed to talk. They had lost everything and were trying to move on. But a few responded. A father in Ohio, a mother in California, an older sister in Florida. We exchanged stories, shared our grief, and pieced together a clearer picture of Kairo's operation. He targeted young people who had recently come into money, often through inheritance. He used a network of early converts like my Leo to recruit new members, creating a pyramid-like structure of belief. He isolated them, controlled their access to information, and slowly convinced them that surrendering their wealth was a noble act of faith in him and his vision. One of the people I spoke to was a man named David. His son had lost over $500,000. David had tried to fight back. He had hired a private investigator. The guy is a ghost, just like you said, David told me over a shaky video call. His name, Kairo, is fake. His real name is Kevin Prentice. He has a history of small-time scams, but nothing on this scale. He is smart. He keeps everything just on the right side of legal, using the gift loophole and the language of a spiritual movement rather than a financial one-inch. So, he is untouchable? I asked, feeling that familiar despair creeping back in. Legally, almost, David said. But his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. His ego. He has built this entire world around his own personality. He needs the adoration, the worship. If you can tarnish his image, if you can make his own followers doubt him, the whole thing could come crashing down. David's words sparked an idea. I could not fight Kairo in a courtroom. But I could fight him in the court of public opinion, or at least in the opinion of his followers. And the perfect venue was coming up, Leo's birthday party. The party was becoming my entire focus. Leo was planning it at a rented event space, a chic, modern loft that would undoubtedly be paid for with the dregs of his savings account. He had invited all his new friends from Kairo's community. And, of course, the guest of honor would be Kairo himself. It was meant to be a celebration of Leo's new life, a public declaration of his loyalty. I was going to make it a trial. My next step was to talk to my brother, Mark. I needed support, or at least someone in the family to know what I was planning. Mark is a good man, but he has always been a bit too hands-off when it comes to parenting. His philosophy is to let kids make their own mistakes. I called him and laid out the whole story. The $2 million, the guru, the irrevocable gift, my conversations with the other families. His reaction was frustratingly predictable. "Bo, cease. That is rough," he said, his voice full of a detached sympathy. "But Leo is a grown man. It is his money. Maybe this is a lesson he needs to learn the hard way." The hard way? Mark, he could lose everything. He is being brainwashed by a con artist. "Are you sure you are not overreacting a little?" he asked. "Kids get into weird things. He will probably get bored of this crypto stuff in a year and move on." "This is not just weird crypto stuff," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "This is a cult, and I am not going to stand by and watch my son be destroyed by it." "So, what are you going to do?" he asked. "You cannot force him to leave." "I am going to show him who Kairo really is," I said. At his birthday party, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I do not think that is a good idea, sis," he said finally. "You're going to cause a huge scene. You will humiliate Leo and push him away for good." "He is already gone, Mark," I said, my voice cold. "I am trying to bring him back. I had hoped for your support, but I see I am on my own with this." I ended the call feeling more isolated than ever. Even my own brother did not understand the severity of the situation. He saw a bad financial decision. I saw a soul being stolen. His lack of support, however, did not deter me. It strengthened my resolve. If I was the only one willing to fight for Leo, then I would fight twice as hard. The days leading up to the party were a blur of secret preparations. My main goal was to find something that would break through Leo's conditioning. Words were not enough. I needed something visual, something visceral. I needed Kairo, in his own words, to condemn himself. I went back to the forums, back to my conversations with the other families. I asked them if they had any recordings, any videos, anything from behind the curtain of Kairo's public persona.
For days, I got nothing.
There were plenty of public-facing videos of his seminars and speeches, but they were all polished and carefully scripted. Then, I got a message from a new user on the forum. Her name was Jenna. She said she had been part of Kairo's inner circle. She had left the group 6 months ago, broke and disillusioned. She said she had something she thought I should see. She was scared. She did not want her name involved. But she wanted to stop him. We arranged a secure video call. Jenna was young, probably not much older than Leo. Her face was pale, and she looked haunted. "You have to understand," she began, her voice trembling. "He makes you feel like you are part of something special. He finds your insecurities and promises to fix them. For me, it was a fear of being ordinary. He told me I was destined for greatness, but only if I trusted him completely." She told me her story. She had given him her life savings, about $75,000. She had worked for him for almost a year, managing his schedule, organizing his seminars. She saw firsthand how he manipulated people, how he reveled in their devotion. He used to have these small, private meetings with his core team, she said, her eyes welling up with tears. He would brag about his conquests. He would laugh about how easy it was to separate people from their money. My heart started to pound. "Did you ever record any of these meetings?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip. It was stupid. It was risky. But I started to have doubts. Something felt wrong. I recorded one of them on my phone. Just the audio at first, but then I managed to get some video. "Jenna, do you still have it?" I asked, leaning closer to the screen. She nodded slowly. "I have been too afraid to do anything with it. He threatened me when I left. He said he would ruin my life." "He is already ruining lives," I said. "My son's life. Please, Jenna. If you share that video with me, I promise I will protect you. I will not reveal my source. But I need it. I need to show my son who this man really is." She was silent for a long time. I could see the conflict on her face, the fear warring with the desire for justice. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Okay," she said. "I will send it to you. Just get him. Get him for all of us." An hour later, a video file appeared in my inbox. My hands were shaking as I clicked play. The quality was not great. It was clearly filmed secretly, the phone hidden on a table or in a pocket. But the audio was clear. It was Kairo, speaking to a small group of people in what looked like a hotel suite. He was lounging on a sofa, a glass of champagne in his hand. And he was laughing. "They are so eager to believe," he said, a smug grin on his face. "You just have to find the right frequency. For the trust fund lambs, it is legacy and purpose. You tell them their parents' money is dirty, that it is part of the old, corrupt system. But they can purify it. They can transmute it into something meaningful by giving it to us. By giving it to me." Someone else in the room laughed. "Trust fund lambs. I like that." "It is perfect, is it not?" Kairo continued, taking a sip of champagne. "They are so desperate to rebel, so desperate to prove they are more than just their inheritance. So I give them a rebellion to buy into. It is the easiest sale in the world. They line up like willing sheep to be shorn, and they thank you for the privilege." He then went on to mock a specific follower, a young man who had recently donated a large sum. He mimicked the boy's earnest, questioning tone, and the room erupted in laughter. He was talking about someone just like my Leo. I watched the video 3 times, my anger growing with each viewing until it was a white-hot fire in my chest. This was it. This was the proof. This was the weapon I needed. The video was not just damning, it was cruel. It showed Kairo not as a visionary or a mentor, but as a predator, a parasite who held his own followers in utter contempt. He called them lambs. He called them sheep. And he laughed at their faith in him. Leo would not be able to deny this. He would not be able to explain it away. He would have to see the man behind the curtain. I saved the video to a USB drive, which I kept with me at all times. I began to finalize my plan for the party. I needed to be able to play the video on a large screen for everyone to see. I called the event space, pretending to be Leo's assistant, and confirmed they had a large screen television with an HDMI and USB input. The stage was set. The day of Leo's birthday arrived. I felt a strange calm, the kind that comes when you have committed to a course of action and there is no turning back. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple, elegant black dress. I wanted to look composed, in control. A mother, not a hysteric. When I arrived at the party, the loft was already filled with people. Most of them were young, in their 20s and 30s, all with the same bright-eyed, eager expression I had seen on Leo. They buzzed with a nervous energy, like acolytes awaiting the arrival of their prophet. Leo came over to greet me. He was wearing a new, expensive-looking suit. He seemed happy, but it was a brittle kind of happiness. "Mom, you came," he said, giving me an awkward hug. "Of course I came, Leo. It is your birthday," I said, forcing a smile. "It is a lovely party. Kairo should be here any minute," he said, his eyes scanning the crowd, full of anticipation. "He is going to give a speech. He is going to talk about the next phase of the project." "That sounds exciting," I said. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. A few minutes later, Kairo made his entrance. A hush fell over the room. He was exactly as he appeared in his photos, tall, handsome, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit with no tie. He moved through the crowd like a king, smiling, shaking hands, placing a familiar hand on a shoulder here, a whispered word there. He exuded an aura of effortless confidence and power. When he saw me standing with Leo, he walked directly toward us, his smile widening. "You must be the mother," he said, extending a hand to me. His grip was firm, his eyes looked directly into mine. It was a practiced, disarming gaze. "Leo speaks so highly of you. Kairo." "I know who you are," I said, my voice flat. I did not take his hand. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered instantly. "A pleasure," he said, turning his attention back to Leo. "Happy birthday, my friend. A new year, a new beginning for us all." The party continued. There were drinks and food, but the atmosphere was one of reverence. Everyone was focused on Kairo, who held court in the center of the room. He spoke about freedom, about breaking chains, about building a new world on the ashes of the old. His words were empty, but his delivery was masterful. He made people feel seen, chosen, special. He was a master manipulator, and I watched as my son and all the others hung on his every word. Finally, the moment came. Leo stood up to give a speech. He thanked everyone for coming. Then he turned to Kairo. "I especially want to thank one person," Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. "A man who opened my eyes and showed me a new way to live. Before I met him, I was lost. I had resources, but I had no purpose. Kairo gave me a purpose. He taught me that true wealth is not something you hoard, but something you contribute to a greater cause." Joining his movement was the best decision of my life. He raised his glass. "To Kairo." The room erupted in applause. "To Kairo," they all echoed. My heart broke for my son. So full of sincere belief, so utterly deceived. This was it. This was my cue. As the applause died down, I stood up. "That was a beautiful speech, Leo," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. All eyes turned to me. "And since it is your birthday, I have a special gift for you as well. A video tribute, you might say." Leo looked confused, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. Mom, what are you doing? This is not the time. Oh, I think it is the perfect time, I said, walking toward the large television screen at the front of the room. I pulled the USB drive from my purse. It is a message from Kairo. A special, private message.
I think you will all find it very
enlightening. Kairo was watching me now, his charming smile gone, replaced by a narrow-eyed watchfulness. He had no idea what was on the drive, but he knew I was a threat. I really do not think this is necessary, Kairo said, his voice smooth but with an edge of steel. Let's not distract from celebrating Leo. This is for Leo, I said, plugging the USB drive into the television. It is all for him. I used the remote to select the file. The screen flickered to life, and Kairo's voice, cruel and mocking, filled the silent room. The video began to play. The image was shaky, but Kairo's face was clear, illuminated by the dim light of the hotel suite. The sound of his condescending laughter echoed through the chic loft. A wave of confusion rippled through the crowd. This was not a polished seminar. This was something raw, something they were not meant to see. They are so eager to believe, Kairo's voice sneered from the speakers. I watched Leo's face. His brow was furrowed in confusion. He glanced at Kairo, who was standing frozen, his face ashen. The charming guru had vanished, replaced by a cornered animal. You just have to find the right frequency, the Kairo on the screen continued, swirling his champagne. For the trust fund lambs, it is legacy and purpose. I heard a gasp from someone in the crowd. The term trust fund lambs hung in the air, ugly and sharp. Leo's eyes widened. He looked from the screen to Kairo, then back to the screen, as if he could not reconcile the two images. The man he idolized, the visionary, was using a term of utter contempt for people just like him. You tell them their parents' money is dirty. On screen, Kairo explained with a smug grin that it is part of the old, corrupt system.
But they can purify it
by giving it to me. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from celebratory to funereal. The bright-eyed followers were now looking at each other, their faces filled with dawning horror and disbelief. The spell was breaking. I could see it happening in real time. It is perfect, is it not? Kairo bragged. They line up like willing sheep to be shorn, and they thank you for the privilege. At the phrase, willing sheep, Leo flinched as if he had been struck. His face, which had been filled with adoration just minutes before, was now a canvas of pain and confusion. The color had drained from it completely. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, as if asking me to make it stop. But I could not. He had to see it all. Kairo, the real Kairo standing in the room, finally found his voice. This is a fabrication, he shouted, his voice strained. This is a deepfake. A pathetic attempt by a bitter woman who cannot stand to see her son succeed without her. But his denial was weak, his panic too obvious. The man on the screen was undeniably him. The voice, the mannerisms, the smug arrogance. It was all there. The video continued, reaching its cruelest point. Kairo began to mock a specific follower, mimicking his earnest voice. But Kairo, how can we be sure the returns are guaranteed? He whined in a caricature of a young man's voice. The small group in the hotel suite on the screen roared with laughter. In the loft, there was only silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Leo took a stumbling step backward, his eyes locked on the screen. The foundation of his new world was crumbling to dust around him. The man he had called his mentor, the man to whom he had given his entire future, was laughing at him. He was a joke. A lamb. A sheep. When the video ended, the screen went black, but the images and words remained, hanging in the air like poison. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence stretched on, thick with betrayal. Finally, Leo turned his head slowly, mechanically, to look at Kairo. His voice was a choked whisper. Is this true? Kairo's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. He saw no friendly faces. He saw only shock, accusation, and disgust. His mask of confidence was completely shattered. Leo, you cannot believe this, he stammered, taking a step toward him. She is trying to manipulate you. She is trying to control you, just like I warned you she would. But his words had lost their power. The magic was gone. Is it true? Leo asked again, his voice louder this time, shaking with a rage I had never heard from him before. Kairo opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer. He was exposed. He turned and pushed his way through the stunned crowd, heading for the door. A few other people in the room, parents who had been invited and had been watching from the sidelines with growing alarm, moved to block his path. I do not think you are going anywhere, one of the fathers said, a big man with a grim expression. I think you have some explaining to do. The party was over. The trial had begun. I walked over to Leo, who was standing completely still, his eyes still fixed on the black screen. Tears were streaming down his face, silent and steady. I put my hand on his arm. He did not pull away. He leaned into me, his body trembling, and for the first time in months, he felt like my son again. He was lost, but he was home. The money was gone, but I did not care. In that moment, all that mattered was that I had him back. The cost was immense, but the price of losing him would have been so much higher. In the chaotic aftermath, Kairo, whose real name we all soon learned was Kevin Prentice, was detained not by police, but by a group of very angry parents who refused to let him leave until they had answers. The facade of the enlightened guru evaporated, revealing a small, frightened con man. His other followers, the lambs, were in a state of shock. Some were crying. Others were shouting questions at him, their voices filled with the agony of betrayal. My video had not just created a crack in their belief, it had shattered it completely. I guided Leo away from the center of the storm, to a quiet corner of the room. He was still shaking, unable to speak. I just held him, letting him cry. All the brainwashing, all the false confidence, had been stripped away, leaving behind a raw, wounded young man. My young man. My son. I was so stupid, Mom, he finally whispered, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I believed everything he said. He is a professional liar, Leo, I said softly, stroking his hair. It is not your fault. He preys on good people. He preys on their hopes. But the money, Dad's money, it is all gone. The words came out as a sob, a fresh wave of grief washing over him. We will figure it out, I said, though I had no idea how. Money is just money. I was afraid I had lost you. That is what really mattered. The police eventually arrived, called by the venue manager. Statements were taken. Kairo, or Kevin, was taken in for questioning. It was the beginning of a long and complicated legal process. In the days that followed, the story broke. Jenna, emboldened by the public exposure, came forward with the original, unedited video and her own testimony. Other families, seeing the news, joined the chorus. A class action lawsuit was filed. It turned out Kairo had a web of shell corporations and offshore accounts, and a team of lawyers skilled at protecting him. Getting any of the money back would be a long and arduous fight. My brother, Mark, called me the day after the party. He sounded different, humbled. I saw the news, he said, his voice quiet. I am so sorry, sis. You were right about everything. I should have listened to you. I should have been there for you and Leo. It is okay, Mark, I said, and I meant it. His apology was a small bomb on a very large wound. Is there anything I can do? He asked. Anything at all. Just be his uncle, I said. He is going to need his family right now. The most difficult conversation, of course, was with Leo. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had our terrible fight, but the atmosphere was completely different. There were no defenses up, no jargon, no condescension. There was only shame and regret in his eyes. I do not know how I could have been so blind, he said, staring down at his hands. He made it all sound so logical, so revolutionary. I wanted to believe so badly that I was part of something important, something more than just a guy who inherited a lot of money. He found your insecurity and he exploited it, I said. That is what predators do. You wanted to build something. He just wanted to take. We talked for hours. He told me everything. About the private meetings, The constant reinforcement of the group's beliefs, the subtle ways Kairo would turn them against their families, painting them as small-minded and fearful. He explained how giving away the money felt, at the time, like a powerful, liberating act, a shedding of an old skin. It was only now, on the other side, that he could see it for what it was, a surrender. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice small. "Now you start over," I said. "You get a job. You rebuild. It will not be the life you expected, but it will be your life. One you build yourself. Your father would be proud of that." The legal battle against Kairo dragged on for over a year. Sarah helped us find a good lawyer, one who specialized in fraud cases. We worked with the other families, pooling our resources and our evidence. The video I played at the party became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case, proof of fraudulent intent. It was used to pierce the legal protection of the gift status of the donations. Eventually, some of Kairo's assets were frozen. We were told we might eventually see a small fraction of the money back. Perhaps 10 cents on the dollar if we were lucky. I had made my peace with the financial loss long ago. The real victory had already been won. Leo moved out of his fancy apartment, which he could no longer afford, and into a small place across town. He got a job at a local bookstore. It was humble work, but it was honest. He started taking community college classes at night, studying to be a paralegal. He said he wanted to help people who had been taken advantage of, like he had. He was quieter now, more thoughtful. The arrogant fervor was gone, replaced by a hard-won humility. Our relationship began to heal. We had dinner once a week. We talked about books, about his classes, about everyday things. We never spoke of Kairo. We did not need to. His ghost was a permanent resident in our lives, a reminder of how close we had come to losing everything. About 18 months after the party, I received a check in the mail. It was the first distribution from the class action settlement. It was for a little over $100,000. I looked at it for a long time, then I put it in an envelope and drove to Leo's apartment. I found him studying at his small kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks. I placed the envelope on the table in front of him. He looked at it, then at me. "What is this?" he asked. "It is a start," I said. "The first payment from the settlement. It is not much compared to what was lost, but it is something." He pushed the envelope back toward me.
"No, Mum.
"You keep it. I do not deserve it." "It is not about deserving it, Leo," I said, pushing it back to him. "It is your money. It is from your father. Use it for school. Use it to build a real future. The kind he wanted for you." He looked down at the check, and his eyes filled with tears. This time, they were not tears of shame, but of gratitude. He nodded, unable to speak. I left him there with his books and his second chance. Driving home, I thought about the journey we had been on. The pain, the fear, the anger. The desperate plan that could have gone so wrong. Playing that video was the biggest gamble of my life. I could have alienated my son forever, solidifying his belief that I was the enemy. But sometimes, to save someone from a burning building, you have to break down the door. You have to risk causing damage to rescue them from the flames. The inheritance was gone. A fortune turned to smoke. But my son was back. He had lost his wealth, but he had found himself again. And I had learned something too. I learned that a mother's love is not always gentle. Sometimes it is a weapon. And I had been willing to burn down his world to save him from it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. The quiet hum of grief for my husband was still there, but it was no longer alone. It was joined by a new, quiet sound. The sound of peace.